Smb enumeration part, or we can say enumeration normal part. So before showing you the enumeration parts, let's jump to the website. One website I'm going to show you, what is called Got Milk. Basic Linux privilege escalation, Got Milk. In everywhere you will see a word called enumeration, and there is a statement called enumeration is a key. So if I ask you in the layman language, what is called enumeration? So enumeration is a process which is your third phase of your VA part. The third phase of your VA part, which is basically used for extract the information, and in information like the services which is running in the back end of the server, and some drivers, some applications, some data which is on the server side. So this blog, the basic Linux privilege escalation, leave the privilege escalation word. The word comes enumeration. Enumeration means collect the information to the different services which is running in the backend process. So you will see something like this. Collect enumeration, more enumeration, and some more enumeration. Means extract more information in the deep of the server side. Sort through the data, analyze the precision, search, known what to search for and where to find the exploit code. Customize exploit so it fits. Not every exploit works for every system out of the box. Get ready for the lots of trials and errors. This is the word which is most hurts. You will have false positive all the ways. And why I'm showing you this website, because in this website you will see some words like what is the distribution type and what version. For example, the distribution type is talking, it's saying us that the Ubuntu version or the Linux version and the Kali version. See over here. So I'm gonna write LSB release. So first of all, we have to search this file. I guess in my latest version I don't have this one. So either we can copy this one and paste it over here, and you can see the version of the Kali Linux. Enumeration means extract all the services which is running on the server side. 2019.3. Over here you can see they are saying Debian base and Red Hat base. So right now we are using a Debian Kali base, which is a free version. The Red Hat, which is our SAN OS operating system. See over here, what is the kernel version? Is it a 64-bit? So what do you use? Uname-A. Through the Uname-A, you can simply check the kernel version, which is 5.20. But if I ask you how many users are there in the system, so what are you going to look for next? For example, you're going to look for cat etc password directory to see all the users on the server side. These are all the users on the server side. The first one is your root, the daemon, the bin, the system. These all are your system users. And you can see over this one, bin bash is a terminal. No login. They have permissions. That's why the privilege escalation word comes in the post later on the post production part. So the most of the things, if I simply gonna use etc pseudo files, what is the use of pseudo files? I simply use etc pseudo files. Pseudo file contains all the user privileges. Basically, I am root, so I can access those files. But if I talk about a local user doesn't have the permission to access those files. For example, you can see that there's only one user which has all the permissions, and that is user root. So in this scenario, the most important part that we're going to cover today is the enumeration phase. And these are some of the basic words you should know about. What you can learn from the environment variables. The environment variable which is set by the specific user. etc profile, bash rc, which is your history, profile, bash logout, environment, set. Is there any printer? These are the commands, basic commands over here. What are the applications are running in the backend process? Which privileges they are using? For example, In the Windows system, we use uh, task manager, but over here we can write top to check the application which is running on the server side. So you can see the consumption of the memory over here with the right up top. Or otherwise, you can do one thing. You can write PS, which is stand for process, AUX, execution. See, most of the attackers, most of the pen testers, they basically look for the application which is running on the root permissions, and they have a local user granted. So either I can use PS AUX pipe grep command. Through the grep command, I can specify the function. So I'm going to check the root, and these are the application which is running as root. And I guess I'm the only user on server. Sometimes we use different kind of things. If we are using multiple tabs, for example, we are using multiple tabs, and let's run some applications also. Service SSH start. So I'm running an application. So I'm running an SSH application on my server. Let's run some Apache also. Apache 2 start. So how would I know these applications are running in the backend? See, through the app, what services are running? What have their privileges? Which services are being running with root? There are lots of other techniques that you can use it for enumeration part. For example, most of the people, they simply use to enumerate all the services which is running, and you should know about the backend process. How does it works? For example, if I want to check what other applications are running in the backend process of this Linux system, so I can use netstat. If you guys doesn't know about the netstat, you can write men. Netstat prints network connection, routing tables, interface statics, mysql connection, and multicast memberships. See over here, there's lots of things that you can use. Netstat prints information about the Linux networking subsystems. And over here, through the netstat, we can identify the number of protocols which is running in the backend process. So netstat -f help. So over here, I'm going to use some operators. I'm going to use -a, which stands for display all sockets. -n, the small n, the numeric IP address only. T stands for TCP ports, U stands for UDP ports, and P stands for programs, display process ID. So let's try this one. So over here, I can see these are the application which is running in the backend of a specific server, which is triple one. We can see the port 22 is also running over there. This is Firefox running in the backend from my local machine to the foreign machine, the source to the destination. We can see the port 80 is also running, the port 22. Or otherwise, I can use ANTP grep SSH. It's all about the filter that you can use it for enumeration part. But today, this is a small part. But if I talk about the UID, the user identification number, each and every user has a ID number, and you can see the ID number which has root is 0. Daemon has 1, bin has 2, system has 3, synchronization has 4. These are the user ID which is constant to every user on the server. For example, you can write ID over there. See. So when there is a question about the enumeration part, enumeration is very essential phase of pen testing, because when a pen tester has established an active connection, see, when you are in active connection with the victim, then he tries to retrieve as much as information about the victim machine which could be useful to exploit further. So in this scenario, in the enumeration phase, I'm going to teach you about these tools. We're going to start with all these tools. Plus, I'm going to show you how the SMB works. The first of all, today is your SMB enumeration part. But enumeration could be your SMTP, SNMP, SMB, your other further applications also. So if I talk about the word SMB, SMB stands for Server Message Block, which is basically used for file sharing system on the local area network. If we talk about the SMB, you can see over here Server Message Block, which is known as Common Internet File System, which works on the application layer protocol for sharing files that allows application on the computer to read and write the files and request services from the server program to the computer network. And how does it work? It works with the client-server communication, with the request and the response. A request which is sent by the your client, and the response which is sent by the server side. But the most important part, there is a question that most of the people ask me: what are the versions of the SMB? If you see the versions are different. They are from 1, 2, 3, and you can see each and every SMB version has a different operating system plus Windows Server also. The Windows Server is an important part. See, the SMB version 1, which has used in Windows 2000, XP, these are the operating system. But if you see over here, they have Windows Server also, 2003, and Windows Server 2003 R2. If you talk about the SMB version 2, they have the version called Vista and Windows Server 2008. If we talk about 2.1, the version used in Windows 7 and Windows Server 2008 R2. This is the most important part. You should know about each and every SMB version on that. 3.0, which use Windows 8 and Windows Server 2012C. 3.0.2, which use Windows 8.1 and Windows Server 2012 R2. And the latest version that we are using still now is 3.1. This version is used in Windows Server 2016 and Windows 10. So I guess if I'm using Windows 10, I should know about my Windows operating system. But the most important part, how the SMB server works, because SMB stands for Server Message Block, which is used for sharing local files on the local area network. And that client should be on the local area network. In this scenario, the most important part that you're going to learn today is SMB enumeration. Identify the following information on Windows and a Samba system. Every pen tester go through SMB enumeration during network pen testing. Banner grabbing, RID cycling, user listing, listing of group membership information, share enumeration, detecting if the host is workgroup or a domain. Identify the remote operating system, password policy retrieval. See. But the most of the cases that you're going to learn today, if you are doing an SMB enumeration, read about the NetBIOS first. SMB enumeration and NetBIOS are interconnected. And you can see over here, NetBIOS is a service which allows communication between an application such as printer or other computer in the network, or a token ring network, or a NetBIOS, which has a NetBIOS name has a 16-digit long character assigned to a computer in the workgroup. Workgroups are basically a peer-to-peer communication of maximum of the 10 computers in the same LAN and a subnet. It has centralized administrator, which means no computer has control over another computer. Each user controls the resource and the security locally on the system. Means I can simply place the workgroup. In this workgroup, these are the systems can be communicated, and these are the systems can be allowed. If you talk about the domain is a client-server network of up to 2,000 computers anywhere in the world. The administrator manages the domain and users to resource. A user with an account of the domain can along with a computer system without having an account on the computer. So the most important port that we were talking about is 135, 137, 138, 139, 445. These are the port which I was talking about for the SMB enumeration. If you see any of the port of this is open on the server side, you can jump to the SMB enumeration part. For example, if you see name services, for the name register and the resolution via the port 137. That's why my local server has a port number 137 open, and I can see my name server, which is ma. Datagram distribution services, DGM, for connection less communication via 138. Why? Because it's a UDP protocol and it's basically used for sharing files. Session services means active connection right now. For connection oriented communication, which works on port number 139. Session. Right now, if I'm active and I'm taking your classes on my local server, it means the port 139 is open, but it's filtered by the firewall. But it's still on. The 135, the 137, 135 is basically your RPC endpoint mapper, remote procedure call when an application is entered to an in local environment. RPC is a major program to assign an open port. The 137 is your name server. The 138 your datagram server for sharing file server, and you can see 137 and 138 are UDP ports, and 139 and 445 are your TCP port, which is your session services and your SMB protocol. Is it clear to all?
Yes, sir. सर तो हमारा तो सेशन 139 पे चल रहा था, हम इसको फायरवॉल को बाईपास करके इस सेशन को हाईजैक कर सकते हैं ना?
अच्छा, मैं आपको चैलेंज करता हूँ। मेरा यहाँ पे स्टैटिक आईपी है, ठीक है, मैं अपना आईपी एड्रेस दे रहा हूँ, मैं अगर पोर्ट भी ओपन कर रहा हूँ, मेरे फायरवॉल को बाईपास करके दिखाओ। I told you last time that bypassing firewall is a myth. There is nothing such thing of bypass firewall. There's all rules and regulation to test.
Okay.
Firewall can be tested only on two ports, 22, port number 22 and port number 23. You can only perform a brute force attack on that.
Okay, ऐसे जो FTP पे सर हम करेंगे बस.
Yep.
Okay.
So you can see over here 135 used for Microsoft remote procedure call client and use server to listen to the query and the client. 137 the name service operators on UDP port 137 the name service permitted offered by the name, add group name, delete name, find name. 138 datagram is a connectionless. The application is a response for error detection and recovery in the NBT. The datagram services runs on the UDP port 138. Sends data, broadcast data, receive data. See. And you can see 139, which is a session mode. Let's two computer establish a connection. Allows message to span multiple packets. Provides error detection and recovery. Call, listen, hang up, send, no act, receive, and the most important port that we all know, 445. It is used for Samba protocol, server message log, for sharing files between different operating systems like Windows to Windows, Unix to Unix, Unix Windows. And you can see there are lots of types of attacks. But before that, how we can enumerate? There are many ways that you can use Nmap, or you can see the command S small f capital T SU. For example, let's try one by one all these things: banner grabbing part and Smb enumeration. So over here, the most important part that you're going to learn, you need to find the port numbers, which is 1445. So over here, that we're gonna start with the one by one all the practicals. So let's try with the Nmap. So let's try a new terminal. So over here, we're gonna start with the Nmap with the capital P for the specify the port number 4445, and I'm gonna specify with the range and my network. So I'm gonna scan my entire network to identify the port number 445 is open or not on the server side. As per the data, the port 445 is your SMB port, and you can see that there are lots of servers on the server. First one is router, which is closed over here. 100, which is closed, 102, which is filtered, which is your Sony phone, 105, which is your Ashutik, 109. Over here, you can see uh, filtered and your other ports. But you can simply merge more ports like 139 also. 139 is also a session ID. So if you see over here, they're also filtered or closed, but in the 139, you can see that the port number is open. If any of the port number 137, 138, 139, 445 is open, you can simply use it. For major cases, what we do, we try different techniques. Major part is to enumeration and to check all the services which are running in the protocol. Operating systems, computer network, and Smb security mode. So our major concern would be use all the services. But for example, most of the people, they ask for scanning vulnerabilities. Scanning vulnerabilities, in this case, they are using Smb1. They are using Nmap scripts. For example, if you see over here, I'm going to use the locate smb.1. So you can see the Nmap NSC scripts to identify the Smb vulnerabilities on the Windows server. So over here, I have one of my Windows server in my local machine. So let's run this XP machine over here. So I have on my Windows machine. So let's try to extract this one. I'm going to check the IP address. So the IP address is 108. Let's try to jump over here. Let's ping the server. Ping 192.168.0.108. So I can see that the machine is pinging. Yes. So let's try to extract. Let's try all these Smb vulnerabilities on a specific server, which is 108 over here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use nmap -fn script, and I'm going to use smb.1, which is a script over there, and asterisk. Why I'm using a wildcard, because I'm going to use all the vulnerabilities according to the server and the server IP address. So through this, I'm basically checking the duration, the enumeration phase. Generally, we go for banner grabbing to identify the version of running services and host operating system. Once you enumerate this information, you should go for the vulnerability scan phase to identify whether the installed service is vulnerable version of the patch server or not. So either you can use the specify port, or I will say don't use that one. So it will scan the entire network to identify the loopholes on the server side and see. It's try to use ms10.054, which was false, ms10 was 61, which is error, and we can see ms17_010, which is saying state is vulnerable. And we can see there was a port was open, 135, 139, 445 was open. So through the Smb vulnerabilities, we can see simply check the vulnerabilities according to the Windows server. Is it clear to all?
Clear.
So most of the cases, there are lots of other techniques, and now he's gonna use the Metasploit to exploit the server. He find that the server was vulnerable, but this will be our fifth module, system hacking. We're gonna use this technique for system hacking, but we can see that the system was vulnerable because the statement was, and you can read about those things from here also. it will give you the links where you can read those things one by one. WannaCry, we can see the last topic. When you are making a documentation to a company, remember one thing: you have to describe the vulnerability first and where the vulnerability exists on the server side. So this phase, it will show you that it's gonna use the Nmd exploit and gonna start brute forcing. There are many techniques that you can use. If there is an Smb animation, if there is an Smb port is open, you can try the brute force attack with the help of Hydra. See, these are the system hacking process. We're gonna try this one later part. NTLM hashes. See, RDP port. So you can try the NTLM hashes. But the major part that today you're gonna learn about the table which I was talking about as Nmd Lookup, NBT scan, Smb map, Smb client, RPC client, Nmap or enum for Linux. Let's try one by one all these things. So first module is your Nmd Lookup. Nmd Lookup, if I talk in the layman language, Nmd Lookup is basically used to check the server is registered to that specific domain or not. Means the server which is running on that specific location of a company's environment is registered to that specific domain of a self domain or a IT domain or a PT domain. So through the Smb enum lookup, you can identify. Smb enum is used to query NetBIOS names and map the IP address to a network using NetBIOS over TCP/IP queries. The option allows the name queries to direct the particular IP broadcast. So let's try this one. Nmd Lookup with the capital A. What was the capital A of here? The capital A over here is do not note such status as per the IP address. Means check all the data over there. So over here we're gonna use capital A over here and the IP address. So over here I can see the machine name is red, the NetBIOS name is red, and the work group is group. But to identify the such things, you have to read about the code, which is 0003 20 01 001D 1E. Check this one. 00 is workstation, 03 is Windows Messenger Services, 06 is your Windows Access. So the 1D over here, master browser. The 1E is browser service section. You can see something like this. 00 was workstation services. The work group. In the you can talk about the Linux animation. You can use Nmd Lookup, but in the Windows there is something different. You can use nbt stat. So through the nbt stat, we can register the IP address. So -a with the IP address. See this one. You can see that ma is registered to the unique register. This is registered. See. So you can see work group. This domain specific DNS ma is registered to a unique group. So you can identify the net stat also, nbt stat. And you can try in Linux, you can try Nmd Lookup over there to check the specific domain is registered or not. For example, there are many ways that you can try. For example, nbt scan. Nbt scan is basically used to find the NetBIOS name servers in the local area network. See, this is a command utility that tries to scan NetBIOS name server on the open or local area remote. And because of the first step, it's finding the open shares. So through the NVT scan, you can identify the NetBIOS name server in the local area network, which has port number 445 will be open or 139. See this one. So NVT scan NetBIOS scanner -R, or you can simply put /24 with the -B. See, it's gonna scan the entire network to identify what are the name servers are active, and you can see 192.168.1.0.105, which is also registered. See, and these are the name servers. For example, you can scan the entire network also with -R /24. See, there's a small difference. I use -V over here, verbose, to check all the services, and I basically use a specific range with the kept -R, and I can see these are the services which has port number 405 is open and 139 will be open. Ma red on the server side. See this one. Is it clear to all?
Yes, sir.
But what is the major perspective if we find any name servers, or if we find a Samba server? We look for each and everything. For example, we look for share files. If there is SMB server, if there is a Samba, or if they are sharing some files on the local area network, we can also map them with the help of SMB map. SMB map allows to enumerate Samba shares drives across the entire domain, list shared drives, drive permissions, share contents, uploads, download functionality, file names, auto download pattern matching. Through the SMB map, you can simply map all the share folders on the server side. For example, SMB map. Let's do man before that, manual. If you do man before any of the tool, you can see the description over there. SMB map allows user to enumerate Samba shared drives across the entire domain, list of shares. You can see same thing. There's no difference. Sensitive data and information. And if you know any of the user password, you can also try to communicate with the SMB map. See over here. Through the SMB map, you can communicate. Capital H is basically used for host. -D is for domain, the username and the password. You can communicate with that one easily if you have the permission. For example, see this one. SMB map, capital H for host and the IP address. So over here, I'm just taking 109 according to the Samba servers. So let's try this one. If you use it on the default mode, it will try to check only the port number 445. So in this specific 109, the port 445 is not open. There is a port number 139 open. So you can use the capital P for the port and the port number 139. See over here, through the SMB map, I can simply enumerate the services. And I can see there's a print directory which has no access. There's a Cathy directory which has read only. And there's a temp directory which has read and write access. And there is a IPC which is Samba which has no access. Through the SMB map, you can simply enumerate the share folders of the services. You can either try different techniques, but the major part comes when you simply try to enumerate. So in this scenario, through the SMB map, you can map entire network shared drives on the server side. But if you want to communicate with that specific server, you can try your local server. Through your local server, you can also communicate with any of the Samba server, but if it's running on the local network. So we can try the other location, and you can see connect to a server and enter the server address. So all you have to do is write SMB / and the IP address. And you can see you can access those files on over here also, because there was no protection, there was no username and password. There was a Cathy directory, print directory, and temp directory according to this. We have Cathy, read. We have temp, read and write. See. When I click on the Cathy, it asking me for the username and password. And I can see there is two tabs. One is anonymous and one is registered. For the registered, I have to put the password and the work domain. But if it doesn't know the password, if there is no password set on the anonymous, you can try to communicate with no password on that. And I can see that I can communicate with the server without any password. And I can see there are two folders, backup folder and Cathy stuff folder. You can simply get those files. See, there are some files like config.php files. There is some like file like WordPress. There must be some files on the internal driver. Cathy stuff, you can see some text files. You can read that files. Because the server is running on the local network, and we can access those server without the username and password. Let's try. See. Again, if you want to communicate, you can write SMB and the port number. Now we can simply jump to the temp directory. As per the data, I can see that in the temp directory we have read and write permission, but we have a write permission which is very crucial. Now again, he's asking me the password, so I can use anonymous again, and I can access the file. And I can see there are a file like ls, and there is a craw.image file. So over here, there's lots of other techniques that we can use for information gathering part. So in this scenario, the most important part that we're going to learn is how we can extract more information. Either you can use your own local server with this, connect to the server protocol, and you can see if an attacker can execute, if an attacker has the permission to execute that file on the server side, it will be a crucial part. It will be a disaster for the environment. Either you can connect with the server with the GUI version with the Linux, or there's a tool called Smb Client. Smb Client is a client that talks on Smb IFC server. It's offered an interface similar to that of the FTP program. You can communicate with that server easily. For example, Smb Client. So over here, I'm going to use -n for no password, which is your anonymous access. And we're going to use capital L, list share folders. Get a list of share available on the host. Either we can try Smb map, either we can try Smb client. So over here, I'm going to use a capital L and the server IP address. And don't ask me the password, which is anonymous. If you don't put -n, they're going to ask you password. If you doesn't know the password, you can simply put enter if there is no password set. Or either you can try with -n to get an anonymous access. And you can see there are some share folders like this. Print driver, IPC, which is your red server, with the Samba OM2. All temporary files should be stored over here. Temporary temp file, obviously. Cathy file, there's a message over there. So either if you want to communicate with that specific folder, just like Smb map, we can just simply put Cathy over here. and I'm in. See, right question mark to check the allowable functions. So over here, these are the function which is allow. You can see all info, alt name. Let's try all in info. There is no other things. There's rm, there is l, list of files. There are 2 files. You can see these are directories. cd Cathy directory, l. You can see the file. If you want to fetch the file, you can use get. This is just like a FTP. If you use a get or put method, put is to transfer the data from client to server. Get method to get the file from the server to the client. So I can use get over here and the file name to-do list, and I can see the file over here. You can try lots of other techniques to this. cd dot length backup. You can fetch the file. There are lots of techniques that you can use. You can use it for temp directory also. Is a file. You can put a file. You can simply specify the file, whatever you want. If you have the put permission, it means this is a disaster, and any attacker can place a reverse shell or a malware on the server side. So Smb clients are the important part. Each and everything is important in my case. There are many techniques that you can use. For example, Smb client, or you can use RPC client. RPC client is basically used to check most of the cases. RPC client is basically used for domain user enumeration and you can say admin or work domain. RPC utility initially developed to test MS-RPC functionality in the Samba itself. It is undergone several stages of development and stability. Many system administrator has now written scripts around its managed Windows NT clients and Unix systems. We can use RPC client to open an authenticated Smb session. And most of the cases they use it for user enumeration part. Let's try this one to get a null session. This is also known as null session. And null session is basically used. Null session was one of the major vulnerability, the major attack, where an attacker simply place or get a server access and change the data according to the server side. And most of the attackers they use null session for different kinds of attacks. For example, over here, U stand for username. In the null session, if you doesn't know the username and password, you can take proper server connection. And let me show you one thing. RPC client -u for username. If I'm just simply putting a double quote with a blank, I doesn't know the username and the IP address and the capital M. So we can see that we haven't connected to that server. Only we can communicate with the drivers only. We can only enumerate the usernames and the domain department on the server side. Enum users, enum groups users, enum groups. There are lots of things that you can use. There was no usernames. Let's try the code groups. There are no user groups. Let's try this one. Nope. Let's try domain name. See. Domain name is red. You guys tried all the tools one by one. but there is one tool that can enumerate all these things in a single way. But this is also important. This is also a manual part, which is mostly important in the real life scenarios. So what you can try to extract more and more things. We can try one tool which can enumerate all the things one by one query. So that tool would be your enum for Linux. Enum for Linux is a tool for enumerating information which is Windows and Samba system. It attempts to offer similar functionality to enum.exe from available for Windows build. It is written in Perl, basically a wrapper. So what are the things we can do from enum for Linux? We can do RID cycling, user listing, listing of group memberships, shared enumeration, detecting if the host is in workgroup or a domain, identify the remote operating system, and the password policy. We have tried the basic command, but if you try the enum for Linux, and this enum for Linux will work only on Linux, not in Windows. Let me show you one thing. Enum for Linux. Why they are using -a function? Have you mentioned what is the use of -a? Let me show you. In -a, they will use all this function in a specific command. Get user list, machine list, shared list, password policy, password member list, details, applies UNS, specify usernames and password. -a. Do all simple information USGPRIONI. You can try these things. So the major perspective when you are doing an enum for Linux for pen testing part, remember that the server should be a Samba server. So you can see one by one all these things that we have done previously. It's going to perform all these things. Session check, SID, shared identification number, platform ID number, share enumeration part with Alba Smb Client. You can see, and it's still performing. But did you mention about this thing? What is called RID over here? RID stands for Relative Identification Numbers. Let me show you one thing about RID. And they are from 500 to 550 till 1000 to 1050. See over here, why? Because each and every user, each and every application on the Linux system has a RID, which is a constant value to identify. For example, root has an RID, which could be 0. Let's talk about the Linux architecture and the Windows architecture. So in the Linux, we have root. Root RID is 0, which is a pseudo user, super user, you can say. Local user with root permission, which stands for SUID, pseudo user ID, which has a specific constant value, which is 1000. If any of the user has an RID 1000, it means he is a pseudo user. He is the he has the root permission. Local user without root permission, that stands with 1001, or it could be extend to number of time. In Windows, if I talk about in Windows, admin has an RID which is 500. Guest has an RID 501. local user, only the local user, which is an RID 1000. Why I'm saying this RIDs to you guys? See in the bottom side. Look, it extracts the group IDs also, the department, the domain we were talking about, admin, which is an RID 54, 545, users, local user, 546, guest user, 547, power users, account operators, server operators, print operators. And if you go down, you can see the local users, which I was talking about. Enumerating user using SID, share identification number. 1000, which is a local user. See, Peter, 1001, Newmaker, Trolan. These are the local users on the server side. These are the local users on the server side, which is running right now. See, the main objective is to cyclate all the usernames and RIDs function and the work group, the domain department. And these are our local users. You can see the work group also. If you know the password of Peter, you can access to the Smb server. So the main objective of your entire Smb enumeration is to extract all the services which is running in the file system. And the main objective was RID cycling, user listing, listing of group membership, share enumeration, detection of the host in the work group, identification of the remote operating system, password policy. And if you go up, you will see the same thing. But this was a tool technique. In the Smb, in the net BIOS, you will see the attack face, how they make an activate. It's all about the footprinting, scanning, and animation. You have to merge those things and you have to think about the unique codes. And this was all in the animation part.